I now come to a question from Gay Mitchell. Theoretically, it is for Andrea Enria, but we'll wait to see what the question is.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairperson. I would like to ask Chairman Enria if the ESRB is really capable of acting. Are there too many people around the table? Is this going to be a talking shop, or will it be something that will actually steer us through crisis? And for Governor King, if I could ask you, I note what you said, that banks cannot be suitably bailed out by the Irish taxpayer. Our debt GNP ratio in a short period of time has gone from 30% to almost 120%, as you know, because we took onto the public balance sheet private debt. At the same time, because we don't have the income from property, our budget deficits are quite high, but we have undertaken to address that issue. Now, we've addressed these two issues, but there is a remaining issue, which is the capitalisation of the banks and confidence in the banks. And a lot of people have taken their deposits out. Some people tell me they would return their deposits if there could be confidence. And the question to you is this. We have huge welcome liquidity provisions, 130 billion, I think the figure is at present, from the European Central Bank. It's very welcome, but I understand that's a sort of a 14-day process. Would it help in restoring confidence, in your view, if some of that was more medium to long term, maybe 6 to 12 months? Not all of it, but some of it, so that people would see that the Irish taxpayer is not being asked to do everything at once, and that there is a provision available, not on the short term, but on the medium to long term. Thank you.
Andrea, if you go for the first part.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, it's a huge table. I mean, there is a lot of people around the table. But I think that this is also the strength of the ESRB. I mean, to be able to engage all the parties in macroprudential oversight. The way in which we need to operate in order to avoid that this becomes a talking shop, I think, is by making the production process effective in such a way that is able to identify risks and call for actions. And I think that we have done the right steps in the first months of life of the ESRB to move in that direction. First, the steering committee is an important body to, let's say, provide strategic guidance and discussions on ESRB issues, and it is a much smaller body. And then it is important that also the technical groups are let's say, in place so that they can actually provide concrete input to the ESRB. It's also important that all the constituencies, let's say, bring to the table effective pieces of work arguing in the direction of action, so that this could be discussed in a candid way. I mean, I think that one of the most important shortcomings that we have had during the crisis and in the run-up to the crisis was exactly the lack of a place where you could have had candid, honest discussions, confidential discussions between all the parties involved in financial stability matters. And I think that we now have this table, and it is good that we have all the parties around the table. Thank you.
Mervyn.
Let me just make another point on that one question, which is that I'm not a great enthusiast of large meetings, or indeed of small meetings for that matter, if they just take up all the time and leave no time for thought. In this crisis, it would have been better if we'd all had more time to think rather than just go to meetings all the time. But what I have been impressed by at the ESRB is that the people around the table are the most senior policymakers, and they have all approached this with a degree of commitment that I personally find surprising, given the other calls on their times. So I think we've seen, by revealed preference, that people have been willing to invest a lot of time and effort into this, because they themselves have experienced over the previous 4 years the challenges and problems that have arisen through the absence of such a forum. I don't want to intervene in the enormously difficult debate between the Irish authorities and the European authorities. Clearly, the Irish government and the Irish people are facing enormous challenges, and it's really up to that bilateral conversation to work out the right solution. Obviously, it is easier to handle a debt problem if the maturity of the debt is lengthened rather than in which it has to be turned over too quickly. That has been the lesson of sovereign debt over many decades, and actually it's why the United Kingdom has always put a lot of weight on having very long maturity sovereign debt, which has served us well in this crisis. And most importantly, I think it's actually been a message that we've been giving to the banking sector, that the banks themselves need to rely less on short-term funds and more to issuing debt of a longer maturity. You don't make as much money. I mean, banks have got used to the idea of borrowing short and lending long, and if you can get away with it, it's a way to make money. But the way you get away with it is every now and then you turn to the taxpayer or the central bank and ask them to bail you out. And that's not something which the rest of us should take at face value. We should say, no, that we're not there just to support a money-making operation on your part. So lengthening debt is bound to be something that all the players in this financial drama will want to do from now on. And so let me just finish on that point, which is all of us, I think, need to take away the message that lengthening the term of debt is very important.